Hey everyone, happy holidays and welcome to the Rive Holiday Special. I'm Robert.
I'm JC.
I'm Dante.
I'm Michael.
And we're the Rive design team. JC's created this wonderful tree for us to decorate, and we're all going to decorate it with some animated ornaments. We've all got some tips and tricks that you can use in the new year to level up your animation. Once we've got everything animated, we'll go and hang them up on the tree. So what do y'all think? Are we ready to go?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Come on.
Let's do it. Let's Rive.
All right, well, let's hop into it. Okay, I'll get us started off with the tips and tricks. For my first tip, it's for when you're animating something like this, where you have bands that are wrapping around an ellipse, whether it be this ornament, or maybe in your case, it's a globe icon that has strokes that are animating around. Instead of actually trying to animate each one of those strokes or shapes individually, you can actually just start by animating a single band and then applying those keys to whatever else you're going to be animating, whether it's going to be the strokes or in this case, shapes. So what I've done is created a key for the leftmost position and the rightmost position. Now, in addition to those keys, I've also set some keys to actually control the length of the handles, and that lets me change the curvature of the shape as it goes around the ellipse. Now, the last key you need to create is another key that'll allow you to take the stroke or shape from the rightmost position back to the beginning of the timeline, and that key is going to need a hold interpolation on it so that it snaps back. Now, once you're done setting those keys up, then all you need to do is copy and paste all the keys that you've created onto each subsequent band, whether it be a stroke or shape. So you just want to match up the keys for each one of the vertices for your following bands. Now, once you get done with that and you play the animation, it should look like you have one single stroke or band moving across your ellipse. Now, this is where the trick comes in. What you want to do after that is actually go in and set up a work area, and it only needs to be about a second long. In this case, it's going to be 1 second plus a millisecond because I added that hold key that allows us to jump back to the beginning of the timeline. Now, once you have that work area set up, then you just need to center your keys on it, and then copy and paste all those keys to the beginning of the timeline, and then overlap them so that your last key is the same as your first key. Now you can go in and start offsetting each set of keys until you get the right look on the stage. So you can see here that I'm not focused on really the timing. What I'm focused on is getting the ornaments bands to actually look right. Now, the reason that we have two different loops is so that we can offset it, and it's gonna look like this animation is just playing flawlessly. Now, once you're done with that, it's best to preview it and make any sort of changes that you need. In this case, I just sort of slow the animation down. My next tip pertains to character cycles, whether that be a run cycle, walk cycle, or in this case, a prancing cycle. Instead of actually focusing on animating pose to pose, what I recommend is focusing on the X motion and the Y motion of your character. So in this case, the first thing that I start off with was getting the bounce of the character correctly. So that Y motion of the main bone. So I'm focusing on getting the timing right and the easing. Now, once I'm happy with the bounce of the character, then I can go in and start working on the legs. Now, I start with the X motion, and I'm once again focusing on getting the timing and easing correct of all four legs. And then I can go in and actually start working on the Y motion. So I start with one set of legs at the time for the Y because they're going to end up in different locations. And again, just trying to get the timing right and the easing right. So I've got the back legs done. Now I can move on and get those front legs pretty much where I want to be. And once again, using the same strategy, just adding keys for the Y. Now that's the most important thing, is that you don't add any unnecessary keys. So go through and check to make sure you're not adding any extra X or Y keys. Now, once I get all that X and Y motion done for the walking of the character, then I can go in and add in that secondary motion, like in this case, the bob of the head. and the tail. Then I just go in and add in any extra motion. I've also offset some keys so that the legs are all landing on the ground at a different time. So that's it for my tips and tricks. Let's go see what everybody else is working on.
Okay, for my first trick, I'm going to show you how I did this bite of the Cookie Man. So, what I did was create a new shape with the bite. Then I select all the elements of the body and group them. I'm clipping this new group with the bite one. To make the clipping works, I remove the color of the bite shape. Now, when I move this shape, I can cut the body with the bite. For the second bite, what I did was duplicate the bite one, the shape, and change the vertex to create a different bite. Then I select the group of the body and the bite one and group them. I'm clipping this new group with the bite 2. This way, when I move the bite 2, I can cut the body and the bite 1. For the third bite, I did the same. Duplicate the bite 2 and change the vertex to create a different bite. Then I select the group of the body and bite 1 and the bite 2 and group it. And clip it this new group with the bite 3. This way I have three bites that I can move to cut the body of the character. So in animation, what I did was key the initial position of the bites and change the interpolation curve to hold. This way, when I need animate one bite, I only need move this shape, the bite, for example, the bite 1, to the position I want. So when I hit play, you can see how the bite works. My second trick is when you want to turn off the lights and the reflection of the lights at the same time using one key. In this example, when I turn off the light of the noise, the reflection of the head and the horn doesn't work. And this is because these two shapes are in different places on the tree. So what I did was move this shape to the same group of the light of the noise. So this way, when I turn off the lights, the reflection of the head and the reflection of the horn turn off at the same time. But the problem I had was that these two shapes are above to the noise. To fix that, what I did was using the draw order to move this shape below to the noise. So now when I turn off the light of the noise, the reflection of the head and the horn turn off at the same time. The other problem I had was when I move the control of the character, the light of the horn don't follow the horn, and this is because this shape is in the group of the noise, not in the group of the horn. So to fix this, what I did was create a new bone and next to the group of the horn, and then bind the reflection of the horn to this bone. This way, when I move the control of the head, now the light of the horn move with the horn. I did the same with the light of the head. Create a new bone next to the group of the head and bind this light with this bone. So that's it. This way I can move, I can animate the character and the reflection always follow with the elements, and using one key I can turn off the light of the noise and the reflection of the character.
All right. So for my tip, I'm going to show you how I created this 2.5D animation of the train car using animation or time remapping with a nested artboard. So here you can see I've created the 2.5D animation, just duplicating some pieces and then using some shape layers to replicate or kind of fake this 3D turn. So here I'm adding the nested artboard to the main scene, and I'm setting the animation to remap. And first I'm going to kind of position or animate the nested artboard's position on the x-axis to kind of rough in where I want the train to move from right to left on the stage, keeping in mind that I'm going to be remapping or having the car play through that turn animation. And here I'm setting the time to 50%, which is, that train car animation is a second long, and at half of a second, it completes its full or half of its rotation. So here I've set it to 50%, and you can see that it's going from facing forward to the side and traveling across the track. So I also have, in that same animation, the train car animation, I've got the kind of a 180 turn. So facing front and then to the side, and then rotating to show the back of the car. So here at 100%, we should see the back of the car. So the remap is going from 0 to 50 and then holding on the 50% while it travels across, and then goes from 50 to 100% to complete that 180 turn, and to kind of complete that cycle of the train entering from the right and exiting on the left. And so I'm also wanted to add some depth. So here I've just duplicated the train tunnel entrance and exits, and laid those on top of the nested artboard or train car artboard. And then I'm playing with the opacity to get the appearance of the train emerging from the tunnel out of shadow, and then back into the tunnel into shadow. So yeah, that is how I achieve this pseudo 2.5D effect. I think it's kind of a fun way to play with and gives you a lot of control over animating separate components and then composing them or compositing them all onto one scene. And I think it gives you a lot of control that maybe you don't get when you're animating everything within a main artboard. So yeah, I hope you can take this little tip and use it in your future animations. All right, for this next tip, I'm going to show you how I got this cool 3D rotation effect to happen on the snowflake. So I went ahead and built it all out with strokes. And you'll notice I've got some scale keys set on the x-axis. And when I go to scale the snowflake, it just kind of squashes everything. And there's no thickness to the snowflake. It doesn't feel very 3D. So what we can do is go ahead and select all of the strokes in the object. And then over in the strokes properties, we can actually turn off the transform effects. And what that's going to do is it's going to retain the stroke width or the stroke thickness. So anytime we scale it, it will keep its thickness. So you can get this cool pseudo 3D effect. I hope you can use that tip in your future projects.
All right, so for my first tip, I want to share with you my technique, which I use to achieve 2.5D rotations in my projects. It leverages Rive's powerful animation constraints. And with this, you too can make convincing animations with rotations and pivots, just like the snowman in the background. Okay, so we'll get started by creating a rotation controller group. Inside that rotation controller group, we're going to put empty groups in there, which will act as our targets for the constraints. And then lastly, inside that group, we're going to create a rotation controller base. This is really just a circle that will act as a reference for us because we're going to place those target groups along the circumference of that circle. Next, I create this circle, which will act as the first color in the snowman's mouth. Then I add a constraint to it, a translation constraint, and set copy Y to 0.3 and leave copy X to 1. I toggle offset to on and set the target to the first target in the rotation controller group. And so with the translation constraint offset toggled on, we can move the mouth 1 shape into place. Now I'll rotate the rotation controller to demonstrate the translation constraint in action. Next, while holding down Command or Control, I'll select target 1 and mouth 1 then duplicate them by pressing Command or Control D. After renaming them, I reposition target 2, which will also move mouth 2 with it because of the translation constraint. I'm being very careful to line up target 2 with the circumference of the rotation controller base shape. And lastly, I reposition mouth 2 into place. And now I repeat the process again of duplicating and repositioning the remaining mouth shapes to complete the snowman's mouth. With the snowman's mouth completed, I'll rotate the rotation controller to demonstrate the effect again. The way my technique works is that we're taking the rotational movement of the targets within the rotation controller and then translating their X and Y value with the translation constraint in each of the mouth shapes. I repeat this process again, duplicating one of the mouth shapes to create the snowman's eyes. This method can also be used for bone constraints. You can see here how I created a line with multiple layers of strokes to form the snowman's nose. Then I bind each end of the line to a bone, then apply the same translation constraint technique to targets within the rotation controller group. I just want to take a second to call this particular moment out. What I'm doing here is I'm taking the rotation control group and I'm rotating it 90 degrees. And then from here I can move the nose bone along the x-axis to adjust the length of the snowman's nose. I don't have to worry about the perspective here because my method and the translation constraint will take care of that for me. Thanks to the translation constraints, animating this now is really simple. I just need to key in a start angle and an end angle to the timeline. This technique forms the basis for all of the snowman rotation in this animation. I hope you'll be able to take this tip and start making your own 2.5D animations in Rive. And so for my next tip, I'd like to show you how you can use strokes and trim paths to animate the snowfall effect. But ultimately, with a little bit of tweaking, you can use this technique to animate rain, floating ashes, jumping cinders, and even rolling fog. So we'll start off with a pen tool and we'll draw a path that matches the side of the globe. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's very important that the path remains open, so don't click here. We'll remove the fill. And we'll add a stroke and set the thickness to 11. We'll set the end cap to round and the trim path to sequential. We'll set N to 0.1%. Now this creates a neat little snowflake that travels along the path as we increment the offset. Now watch as it hits 100, the snowflake jumps to the side of the path again, and this will be the same with 200. The reason this is happening is because it's an open path. It's a neat little trick that we can take advantage of later on, and it will save us a lot of time when we're keying this in. For now, we'll set it to 0 and then duplicate it twice. So here in animate mode, we're going to key in the trim offset for each of the strokes. At the start, we'll set them to 0, and at the end, we'll set them to 200. So similar to Robert's tip, we're going to use a 1-second work area and then offset our keyframes to evenly distribute our snowflakes along the path. Now, this should allow us to create a nice smooth looping animation with the snowflakes. So let's duplicate that. First, select the path and then press Command or Control D. The trick here is to be in animate mode so that when we duplicate it, we'll also duplicate the animation frames that we've keyed in. Here you can see me editing each of the paths to distribute them across the front of the snow globe. I'm simply dragging the middle vertex of each of the paths and holding the Shift key down to snap them to the X-axis. Next, we have to offset the keyframes so that the snowflakes don't all line up. I've also changed the trim offset value for some of the paths from 200 to 400 to speed up the loop. Alright, that's it for my tips. I hope you enjoyed them and got something from it.
All right, so it seems like all of our ornaments are animated and we're ready to decorate the tree. So let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, so the way that the state machine for this is actually set up is we've got a couple different layers here. The first layer is the, let me find that, is the find ornament layer. And this is the layer that's going to actually control the state machine and zoom in on each of the different ornaments. And I'll show you how that works as more of these ornaments get set up. And then the second layer is the ornament idles. So all of the idle animations, let me show you this. as they hang on the tree, all of the different ornaments actually swing back and forth, and that's controlled by this layer. So combining those two layers is what's going to allow us to zoom in on different parts of the tree and have the ornaments sitting there and swinging. So while everybody else is hanging up their ornaments, I'll go through and set mine up as well. So let's see. What do we need to do that? We'll go back to this. Okay. So I've already set up this ornament here, and all I'm going to do is copy this layer. Oops. Doing that in animate mode. How about we do that in design mode? Okay. Now I need to pick a spot on the tree. Ah, Dante, you stole my spot. It's like a... It's no big deal. All right, I think that's a good spot. I'll be over here by JC. JC's always so nice to me.
Yeah, no, sometimes. Sorry.
Okay, so we're also using nested artboards. As you can see, everybody's ornaments are on nested artboards, and we have them named according to what ornament number they are. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about how the inputs work. So really all I need to do is switch out the nested artboard. So you can see the artboard name here in the inspector. And I'll select ornament 2. And you can see that that updates on the main artboard here. And then I need to add in the animations, because by switching out the nested artboard, it's deleted out the other animations. So I need my idle animation. It's going to be simple. And the prancing animation, that's also going to be simple. Okay, so now I need to go in and set up the animations to actually make this thing work. I'm going to flip over to animate mode. The first thing I'm going to do is add it to the ornament idle. So I need to grab this. And it seems like we're just a little off center there. Okay. So I'm going to add in a little bit of an idle swing. Just left, right. Duplicate that first key, paste it at the end, and give it some easing. All right, and now we need to go and set up the animations on the tree zoomed out animation, and then one for the tree actually zooming in. So for this, for the tree zoomed out, all I need to do is key the idle animation playing. So just go into the animation options here, key that idle animation playing, and then we need to set a key for the prancing animation to not be playing. All right, and then I need to make a new animation. And in this one, we need to zoom in. So actually what I'm going to do, instead of making a new one, I'm just going to duplicate this first animation here. And you can see that I've set a key to zoom in the tree and position it so that the ornament that I want is centered. So now I'm just going to drag it down, find my ornament. Where's it at? Way down here. Oh, it's so far down. There we go. Okay, so now it's centered, and then I just need to change out the animations. So we don't want idle to be playing, and we want looping to be playing. Was that the right animation? I'm not sure. Oh, nope. Need to select my ornament and not playing, playing. Okay, let's test that out. So that looks good. And then on tree zoomed out, we need to go in there and make sure I'm keying the right deal here. And printing. Okay. So that should be working. Okay, so now that I have those two animations set up, what I can do is go in and drop these into the state machine. So let's find the find orn layer. And I can drop in the ornament too. Connect it to the any state. So the any state's going to allow us to jump to any of the states regardless of what state it's on. So it doesn't matter if we're zoomed in on the first ornament, the tree's zoomed out, or we're on the 60th ornament. As long as it's set up on this any state, we can jump to any of the different ornaments as long as the conditions are met. So we need to set that up first or next. So for the conditions, we want to set the orn number, and this one is ornament 2, so I want it to be set to equal to 2. And then we also need the find orn trigger to be hit, and then it should work. So let's go ahead and test it out and see if everything's working. So everything's idling. That looks fine. All right. And let's go to ornament 2, find ornament. Okay, so that works pretty good, but the other thing that I need to do is set up a duration so that it doesn't just snap to the ornament and actually kind of eases into it. So let's go to a different ornament here. Find ornament 1. All right, and then find ornament 2. All right, and that seems like it's working well. Let me zoom out. All right, so I'm going to let everybody go ahead and finish up hanging their ornaments, and that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you leave us a comment, and we'll try and get back to those as quickly as possible. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like and consider subscribing so that you can stay up to date on any of the new videos that we're posting. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.